Hey guys, GWS here, and this is going to include probably more of my subscribers than not, and this is going to include nearly everybody on the internet and on most sides except for maybe like the furthest libertarian people. Um, and let me just, I always want to preface this by, naming my biases and all that so that you guys can get the truth because when shit's gonna get real, I have to be real with you. As you can see, this is my spectrum right here. I probably should have just clicked on it. You can see it, but I kind of want to blow it up. But it's not gonna let me do that, is it? Not really. Okay, well, we'll just deal with that. Okay, now, as you can see from the spectrum, if your quality's good enough, I am basically near the center ideologically, both on the authoritarian left and right versus the economic left and right. I am pretty moderate on most issues. Um, and so I have a lot of different positions. I've also made previous videos explaining my liberalism and where I'm a conservative. So I am not talking to you as an extreme right winger or extreme libertarian, mind you. I'm no Stefan Molyneux. I don't believe in anarchy. But here it is. The entire internet, probably including many of my subscribers, are just absolutely dumb when it comes to net neutrality. Because here's the fact. The fact is that, yeah, the ISPs are greedy. Yeah, they want to make a profit. And yeah, if you reduce regulations, they may try to create packages, try to strike deals with other various media companies. But here's the thing that you're missing from all of this, and we're going to get into some specific things I want to get into about the FCC, about Title II of the Telecommunications Act, which is how net neutrality is implemented, um, as well as, of course, to let you know that we never ever got to see what the actual rules were. Um, so, here's what you don't want. The last entity you want controlling the internet is the FCC. The FCC that many of you are slandering, creating memes about, doing these nasty videos, shooting your phones with a Jeet Pie. Just keep in mind that when you're doing that, you're saying, oh, by the way, I want you to control um, my internet. I want you to regulate it. Because that's what's going to end up happening. The FCC is the same entity that fought cable television when the technology was there 20 years earlier. It fought tooth and nail to keep cable television infrastructure from being built because of the gigantic media companies that existed that held monopolies. ABC, NBC, CBS, all that. They controlled. You had your analog television service that you got via your antenna, um, and that is the way they wanted to keep it. And it's the same exact arguments. It is, if you let cable television infrastructure run rampant, what you're going to have is a lot of unregulated television, and we cannot survive. And you're going to have a less valuable experience on television. This is pretty much the same thing made with the internet, because you got companies like Google, like Twitter, like Netflix, Facebook, etc., who are vouching for these rules. Now think about it. Think about this for a second, because it does require a little bit of thought to understand. Why would Google, Facebook, Twitter, and most media companies want net neutrality? It's because these are the same companies that control your content. They already have either monopolies or gigantic shares of control. And the last thing they want is for that dominance to end. And people, it's interesting because people talk about how this is going to make the media worse, how it's going to make your experience worse, how ISPs are going to offer packages that include Twitter, YouTube, etc. Number one, this is gross scaremongering, because an ISP, even unregulated, like if you have no FCC regulations at all with the ISPs, they still can't do that. Why? Because they're using somebody else's intellectual property for profit. And you know who's going to go after them? You offer a Twitter package, Twitter, they're going to sue the hell out of any ISP that offers a Twitter package, or a package that includes Twitter, or they use the name Twitter in any way, or even use something like social media. Like if Twitter feels like that somebody's robbing them, they're going to sue, just like any company. And see, this is where people don't think ahead as to what this means. What this means, even if it goes down, and there will be some aspect sections of it that will go down in this way, and that is that you're going to have billionaires fighting billionaires. Think about what that means. You're going to have, rather than Google having all the control, or Twitter or Facebook, all that having all the control, now all of a sudden they got to fight with an ISP. And that creates room for new social media networks to come up out of nowhere. Because the way it's structured right now, it's pretty uncompetitive. Because say you want to use like another search engine other than Google, you're either going to do that in one of two ways. You either knew about something beforehand, such as Yahoo, such as maybe Bing, or some other search service, or you used Google to find them. And so that in itself just creates the disadvantage. Just like if you want to find another video sharing website, who are you going to go through? You're either going to Google it, which Google owns YouTube, or you're going to YouTube somebody who has another service. And again, you are relying on one service to find another service, and so therefore that service already has the competitive advantage. And you're seeing them use this advantage to censor not only competition, because YouTube videos will always go at the top of those search results. You know who you won't see? You won't see other smaller services like Dailymotion, or what other ones there are. I can't think of. There's another big one too, but I can't think of who it is. But yeah, it's always going to go to the top of the search results. Any kind of YouTube video, any kind of Google ad link, whatever. Always going to go to the top. And they also make deals with media companies. Like if I go, let's see, I believe it's under, is it under trending? See, they have like a media carousel. I'm just not sure where it is, but they have one somewhere. This is Yeah, but what they do is they favor mass media outlets that they find credible. There's some bonus content. Looking at my recommendeds, etc. But the point is, they censor unwanted content. They censor content they don't feel appropriate because advertisers, because they have all the control, that means people have no control, and the only people who control them are the people who advertise for them. So if people pull their ads, they have to appease the advertisers. Why? Because what are people going to do about it? Like, I have a bunch of videos that are either demonetized or I just won't monetize because I know they're going to get demonetized. And that's a huge problem. That is a gigantic problem because they're listening to advertisers and they're also listening to it's it's an anti there's liberals who are caught up in their bias, but it's mostly anti-conservatism, both with the search results, with Facebook, with Twitter, with Google, silent banning, suppressing the trends. You've all seen this. You can watch Project Veritas videos to verify that. And so that's what you have with these mass media companies. And so if you think that having net neutrality rules, quote neutrality, I should say, because it's not actually neutral for the government to be regulating the internet, but for these rules that the FCC passes, like, you think you're really benefiting? You think that your internet is totally free? Bullshit. Because it's becoming more and more abundantly clear that not all content is welcome, and there are people who are controlling the content. The question is, how is the control distributed? Who has the control? And is there competition? And what better way to have competition than to have ISPs fighting mass media companies? But of course, liberals know that they can't win on this issue, on its merits. So they're going to scaremonger. They're going to say things that are blatantly untrue, such as, like I said, offering social media packages with like Twitter or whatnot, which, like I said, you can't do that with somebody else's intellectual property. Like, you will lose in court in 2 seconds if you try to do that. So, and just the sad reality too, and it infuriates me to no end, is that nearly everybody listening to this, conservatives and liberals, have all taken the bait and they've all fallen for it. Nearly all. Nearly all. Molyneux's right. I'm not sure where Shapiro stands, but I think he's against the rules. Crowder is right. But most others are wrong, especially classical liberals. And quite frankly, coming from them, that's just a bitterly sad disappointment, and it shows that they're not quite there yet in terms of being rational about this issue, and I don't know, maybe a lot of other issues too. Because, quite frankly, and let me just remind everybody what FCC control is going to lead to. It's going to lead to it. You're going to get mandatory parental controls, which means more restricted mode, which means more censorship. You're going to have the FCC start issuing fines. You could even go as far as to say that the FCC will require various licenses to use parts of the internet, features of the internet, like new features that crop up that we cannot even conceive of. Guess what? You think the FCC is not going to take control of that? Yeah, the FCC may not impose any future regulations on the internet as it is now, but say you have new infrastructure, say you have new naming conventions, new standards, new whatever, something, some other type of network that is another internet basically, such as, I don't know how Internet 2 is doing, if it's still even alive, but you could have another type of internet that is a separate interface entirely, separate protocols, separate everything. You think the FCC is not going to touch that? You think the FCC is just going to leave it alone? This FCC might, but you think that you get Bernie Sanders in 3-4 years, or somebody equally to the left, you think their FCC is not going to start infringing? Just as organizations such as the CFPB, which have these super special rules, such as not having to be appropriated by Congress, being funded purely by the Federal Reserve. You think that entities like that, with entities like that, you don't think the FCC is going to want their piece of the pie? And that's not scaremongering, because the FCC can and has done that. They did that with television. Television could have been the internet. It had a chance. You had interactive aspects of television like in the late 80s and 90s. But the FCC, as they always do, they want you to ask their permission for everything and pay to get a license. Because that is the tactic of the government. The tactic of the government is to cement the established entities by forcing everybody who enters the market to jump hurdles, jump through hoops of fire, and go through hell just to exist as an entity. And then once you exist as an entity, now all of a sudden you got to pay for compliance, you got to pay for lawyers, you got to pay so much that all of a sudden, you know, you're breaking even, and you can never, ever, ever challenge the established entities. It is what the government always does with everything. Anything that it touches, it kills innovation on. Everything. Kills, slows it down, depends on the level of regulation. So, if this is what you want, keep protesting it, but I'm telling you right now, you're all dumbasses, and you're all going to live to regret this if the FCC is forced to revert back to Obama's rules. Thanks for listening. God bless.